Okay, so in this video, I want to wrap up our treatment of confidence intervals for proportions by considering how we can construct a confidence interval for a difference in two proportions using these more classical confidence interval models. So, for example, let's say we take this question that we've been looking at. Have you worn a face covering when you've left your house over the past week? We saw that overall, out of the 443 people that left their house, 55% of them said they wore a face covering. And maybe we're interested in seeing whether there's any difference between the proportion of Democrats that wore a face covering compared to the proportion of people that identified as Republicans that wore a face covering when they left the house. So over here, we've got the data that was collected from this poll. And so for the Democrats, that was 69%, and for the Republicans, it was 47%. So it looks like these two groups are behaving differently in regards to whether or not they're covering their faces when they left the house. And so, again, we wouldn't want to say that this is definitely the difference in the proportions, because if we collected a different sample, we're going to get some slightly different values. So we want to consider how we can build some error into these estimates to construct an interval estimate for this difference in the two proportions. And let me just admit that I couldn't actually get the raw numbers from this. If you click on this website over here, it just gives us proportions. So let's say that there were 179 Democrats that were in this sample, and 124 of them did wear a face covering in the past week. And that would work out to the 69% that we saw in this survey. And let's say there are 177 Republicans who said they left their house in the previous week. And out of those 177, 83 of them said they wore a face covering. That works out to this 47% that we're seeing over there. And the question is, well, what's the difference in the proportion of Democrats that wore a face covering compared to the proportion of Republicans that wore a face covering? So what we're trying to estimate here is the difference in the proportion of Democrats and the proportion of Republicans. So here we mean all Democrats and all Republicans. And since we don't have that population data, the next best thing is to use this sample of data that we got and construct an interval estimate from those two samples. And that's what we'll take a look at on the next slide.